business in 2008, I really concentrated the first couple of years on creating a line of fragrances that were commercially viable, that would really speak to my clients about what it is that I have to offer creatively. And then I decided I really wanted to do something that had no commercial gain. So for me, it was a 12-month period of researching the smell of people and how the raw materials, the natural perfume raw materials, are used to enhance how somebody smells naturally. For me, I was also quite obsessed with the idea that we cover ourselves in fragrance to mask who we are, and I wanted to bring the attention back to expose what our natural, more animalic smells are. When I formulate a fragrance, I always return to the raw materials themselves. Working with natural perfumery, we have about 300 raw materials. Then we start playing with things like vintages. How old is the Gaiac wood from Paraguay? If the vintage is 5 years old, it's far more honeyed, far more treacle-like. If you buy buchu from a farmer on the south side of a mountain range in Citrusdale, it smells very different to the buchu on the other mountain range. So working with a bespoke person, so working one-on-one and creating a signature fragrance for them, I almost use them as the creative director of the scent, so I'm constantly gauging their response to those raw materials. And from that, I'll come up with one that perhaps I find is quite appropriate to them, whether it might be a sophisticated smell. You know, we have iris root, which is quite a buttery mushroom tone, and that could be quite a sophisticated note for somebody that's not used to wearing a fragrance like that. So the theme can often come unexpectedly, but at the end of the day, it's always true to the response that the bespoke client has to those raw materials. A person's scent or aroma has to do with what they smell like in terms of how healthy they are, so what their fat content is like, what their acidity is like, whether they have a diet that includes perhaps curry or stronger spices. But somebody's profile also includes what we call environmental scents, and those are the scents that we put on ourselves. So it would be a body cream, it would be a shampoo, it would be a fragrance too. And altogether, that comes across as the odor profile of the person. A lot of perfume raw materials have a very strong, almost dirty odor profile in large concentrations. And that is one of the parts of formula making that I love, because one drop can change a concentration and therefore change the development of that oak moss, which is dirty and green and earthy, to make it lighter, like a cut grass note. So we're constantly almost pulling back when formulating, because we want to have that smell develop lightly. We call it the volatility of the scent. It's very interesting when we consider a scent history with somebody's life, because we have these collected memories of smells or perhaps rites of passage. I can remember being 13 and getting a fragrance from my mom that included a body lotion, and being 16 and getting my first fragrance from my first boyfriend. And those rites of passage make you feel more like a woman. And if you think about your scent history in that way, it's very emotional. It's almost like music. It takes you back, it transports you to those times. But what I try and do with my bespoke clients is spend time getting them to have a more objective opinion about the raw materials before we delve back into that scent history, because I want them to feel open to something that perhaps they might initially say they don't like. For instance, we have a basil essential oil that smells a little bit like licorice. And somebody could say they don't like licorice, but they want a cut grass note within their fragrance, and you need to add a drop of this licorice basil to get the freshness and the greenness and these other attributes in it. So if they're wanting to stand away from that, they might miss out on something really important. So we go through a part of the journey where we discount all of those collected memories, and then we come back to them later and sometimes try and incorporate them into a signature fragrance. The one thing for me with my grandfather was that growing up, I never felt like anything was unattainable because I had seen somebody attain everything they wanted to with their business. So to see somebody that has such incredible business success in an interesting area like the beauty industry, it inspired me to feel like there were no boundaries. And sometimes when there are boundaries, especially in the perfume industry, it's a French man's world. And I'm a South African woman coming into that, trying to make a path for myself. So it was never a case of feeling like I couldn't do it. It was just a case of trying to see what my path was and being as authentic as I could to myself, i.e. creating a line of fragrances that are African inspired, sourcing raw materials from Africa, and being the expert on African botanicals that then set me apart. I've never really accepted no, and that might just be part of my personality or my entrepreneurial spirit, but I think part of that does come from the Danish roots of my grandfather.